So I finished Tabula Rasa, and first thing I gotta say, it was very slow. And it was slower than it needed to be. It felt very indulgent. It was pretentious. I didn't mind that so much. They talked about how nail biting is a sign of blocking during the oral stage, a bit of Freudian psychology. They talked about Greek mythology, labyrinths, and minotaurs. So it was pretentious, but I didn't mind that at all. But it felt indulgent in that it was just so slow. I feel like if this was a movie, it could have been a fantastic movie that I would have absolutely raved about, but it just took so long to get where it was going. Now, I will say, one of the more beautifully shot, just so many beautiful images, shows that I've seen. So I didn't mind that it was slow. And I think the actors, they did great casting. They gave great performances. So it was pretty watchable. I didn't mind while I was watching it because there's just so much beauty to take in. It's almost, you don't mind as much how slow it is, but you do feel like, wow, I spent so much more of my life watching that than I needed to. And I should say, you may get the sense that this is going to be very beautiful, but also very scary, kind of great aestheticized horror. And while there are some really scary, beautiful images, there's a ballet sequence that's great. It reminds you a lot of Black Swan. But I'd say a movie like Black Swan, that was more a straight up horror, very scary. This is much more just very beautifully shot, kind of an interesting mystery. I wouldn't say on the whole it's a particularly scary or as scary as the trailer, maybe some of the images that you see might make it out to be. So while there are some nice horror shots, a little kid tearing the stuffing out of a teddy bear, some nice blurry face shots of a face all blurred out in the mirror, and some horror elements of Ouija boards and hauntings and mediums, it's much more so a philosophical mediation on memory and a standard mystery. So the basic premise, our main character, she wakes up in a mental hospital and she has no idea how she got there. Now, first of all, I've got to say there's a character named Vronsky. He's a pyromaniac. He's a great character. He's that over-enthusiastic person you meet at the mental asylum. He reminds you a lot of Brad Pitt's character from 12 Monkeys. So she wakes up there. She has no past memory, so she has amnesia. She doesn't remember anything from her past. And then she also has this condition where slowly memories will start to come back to her. She'll remember more and more. But then if she gets stressed, she'll lose all those memories and go right back to square one. And why it's called Tabula Rasa, that means blank slate. And basically, every time she gets stressed and loses all her memories, she has to start from square one, and she has no memories, and she's a blank slate. So she slowly learns more about her past. She realizes that she and her husband and the young daughter, they moved to this new house. It was a spooky house. She started noticing weird behavior in her daughter. And I love some of the psychology they got into, the kind of mother-daughter rivalry for the father's affection and the absent father and how he's kind of idealized by the daughter and the mother who's actually there, all this familiarity breeding contempt. So there's some great psychological elements and some great parent-child dynamics where she takes her daughter acting out as she takes it personally as a sign that there's something inherently wrong with her as a mother. And we see this great cycle where she feels bad that her daughter's not her pride and joy. She feels bad that she's not able to get all this joy from having her daughter and raising her. That gives her the sense of guilt. It causes her to withdraw and in a sense be kind of not the greatest mother, which leads to her daughter lashing out, which only exacerbates the cycle. Now this whole idea of amnesia, not being able to remember some kind of crime and some kind of trauma causing this amnesia and memory loss and having to piece together what happened, it's really overused at this point. But I liked that they had an interesting take on it where she had to write down stuff and actually do drawings to remember, and she used these drawings as a kind of substitute memory. And one thing, it just gave another opportunity for beautiful, beautiful images of these highly detailed drawings. But also I loved how it reminded me a lot of when you take certain drugs and suddenly you have no short-term memory and no ability to keep things in your mind, whether it's writing stuff down or whether it's on your phone, like writing notes on the notepad on your phone. This becomes kind of like, it becomes part of you and almost part of your memory. So it's amazing how sometimes we think of memory as it's just your brain, it's just memory, but oftentimes different things in our environment, those can be a part of our memory as well. I do want to talk about spoilers a bit. Last thing I'll say before spoilers, so it's slow. I can't stress that enough. She talks to her psychiatrist about not being able to remember anything. She talks to the inspector about not being able to remember anything. She sits on her bed looking pensive, trying to remember things. It's a lot of this, people giving monologues about memory, about how memory is like photographs. We only take photos of the good things and we only remember the good things. I don't think that's true at all, but we learned how the woodpecker has the best spatial memory of all the birds and stores all these nuts during the season, and then in winter knows how to find them all to make it through the winter. So it's very slow and a lot of just talk about the nature of memory. So if you go in expecting this very scary, action-packed action-packed miniseries, you're going to be disappointed if talking about memory and having someone slowly figure out what happened to them, it sounds up your alley, then go for it. So the sort of spoiler I wanted to talk about is we have this motif running through the series about sand, and she always sees this red sand, and it's very interesting. We don't understand what it was. I think the sand, I think it's explained that it's meant to symbolize like the sand in an hourglass, and if too much of it builds up, she's going to forget everything. So when she starts to panic, the sand starts to build up around her, and it's kind of like an hourglass where when too much of it builds up, then she forgets everything. And we get this great scene of her when she learns something really important, and then she's chanting to herself to try to remember it because she knows she's about to forget it. And it's kind of like you're trying to remember a phone number, and as you're dialing the number, you're repeating it over and over to try to remember. And then it was so interesting how she started to write notes to herself, and she had to write them in code because she didn't know who she could trust around her. So she knew she was going to forget something. She wanted to remember it, but she had to write it in code, so only she could kind of figure it out and piece it together. So I thought that was very interesting. Again, very similar to the movie Memento, which was a really good movie. Again, I just wish I wish they could have made this into a movie, because I think if they made it into a movie, it could have been really, really great. Unfortunately, it was just stretched too thin for me to really think it was awesome, but still, it had its good points. Depending on your preference, it might be worth a watch or not.